Thank you, Dr. Honeychurch. It's always for me a nostalgic feeling to be here on the campus of the State College. Myself having been a student at the college for 2 years and also a lecturer at the college for a couple of years before I resigned to enter into elective politics. And I recall the very difficult days here for students and lecturers. And there's so many of young people who were denied an opportunity to attend this college, not because they did not receive the grades or earn themselves the grades to attend, but because the system said we were accepting a majority of 250 students. And I recall being responsible in part for the registration of students. And every year I would register more than the number the principal at the time, Mr. Volume, would instruct me to. And I would tell him a month later that I had placed in 30, 40 students over the 250. And I must say that he never admonished me for that. And as a student myself, I was the only student from not only from my village, but from my entire constituency at the time, attending the college, and that's not long ago. You know, and when I taught there were a handful of them from my constituency. Today, when I look at my file on my college student, because I know every student from my constituency who attends college here, I have seen 165 of them at the school as we speak. So coming from 1 to 165. And it's important for us to, when we are elevated to positions, that we do not use those positions to bring down people, but bring them up. And as fate would have it, the good Lord caused the Prime Minister to appoint me the Minister for Education. Because only 7% of all high school graduates had access to the college. And there's no way you can build a nation, especially in this globalized world, if 93% of your student population ends at high school. And I was charged with the responsibility of education. And my first task was the transformation and revolutionization of the college system in Dominica. And today we have set the platform to allow for 100% access to the college system. So far we have achieved 87%. So once the students meet the basic requirement to enter, there is, in fact, a space at this college for you. But we didn't only create access, we have provided you with the best facilities you can find anywhere in the OECS for a community college. And in many respects, we provide you with the means of taking advantage of the access, insofar as the provision of tuition fees, books in some cases, uniform in some cases, and transportation. We, in fact, assist many students across the country with meeting the transportation. But my task is not to talk about education, but I feel a certain sense of nostalgia and emotion when I do visit the State College. Let me again recognize Dr. Honeychurch, who is chairing for us this morning, my colleague candidates who are all here this morning. I also want to recognize His Excellency Vince Henderson, who is our campaign manager for this 2014 general elections. I would like to especially recognize my colleague and friend, Honorable Sergio, who is the president of the Dominica Labour Party. Let me especially recognize the heads of the various organizations from business community, from civil society, and also from the religious community. I see our dear Mayor, Worship Mrs. Irene John, the various managers of the various institutions, and the banks and local businesses, enterprises, the president of the State College and his lecturers, representatives of the trade unions who are here also, and of course, very importantly, the students of the State College, all of whom are here, the media. Let me also greet especially those who will be making some presentations during the course of this morning. Miss Rosalind Paul, who is the candidate for, well, I could add more and say the member candidate for the Labour Party in Paybush, and my dear friend, the Kalinago Brave, Cassius Daru, product of the One China policy, who is writing now for his PhD in China, and took a break, ended his studies to come to represent the Kalinago people in Parliament. That's a huge sacrifice he's making for his people, recognizing their own investments in him over the years. And also, Honorable Ian Douglas, let me recognize all of you. And to the thousands of people who are viewing live, we're streaming, we're on mapping, I believe. We are, in fact, in every corner of the world. We're live on Kyrie FM as we speak, so I believe the world has stopped for a couple of hours to listen to this historic event. We have let me say, my dear friends, that it gives me great pleasure to present an overview of the Manifesto of the Dominica Labour Party for the 2014 elections, a mere 8 days after the public announcement of the date. I have chosen to present this overview first to representatives of the private sector and other key members of civil society, out of my utmost respect for you and the role you have traditionally played in the economic and social development of our nation. The manifesto we have prepared for wider public distribution later today is a special document carefully drawn up to answer several questions which Dominicans are entitled to ask at this point in time. As a result, it provides a summary record of the major achievements of the Dominica Labour Party since 2000. It also gives a clear outline of our plans for advancing the process of social and economic change over the next 5 years. We have been the change agents for 14 years, and we intend to continue playing this role until we achieve our goal of transforming Dominica into a prosperous, peaceful, and just society. I know that most people will not initially read the document from cover to cover. They will look in the contents and turn to the pages that concern them. Hence, the document is divided into about 30 sections for easy reference and reading. But I want you, as opinion leaders and key decision makers, to consider this manifesto as a collection of carefully chosen policies and programs addressing important areas of social and economic life, which, working together, have the capacity to transform Dominica. All the topics dealt with are interrelated. Naturally, a considerable amount of emphasis is placed on the economy. Indeed, the fundamental lesson we learned during the past 15 years is that in a volatile global marketplace, reckless fiscal and economic policies can set back the development of countries for decades. This manifesto, therefore, starts with an analysis of the global situation with respect to free trade, the technological revolution, and the financial crisis of 2007-2008 that led to the worst recession we have experienced in nearly 100 years. So another important lesson we learned from this was that no matter how much you love your people and desire to help them, you cannot spend money you do not have or which you cannot borrow at concessionary rates. That is a recipe for disaster, which many of our neighbors are still struggling to overcome. Luckily, we in Dominica avoided these pitfalls. We learned from the mistakes that our predecessors made during the closing years of the 20th century. From 2000, we embarked on developing new policies and programs in keeping with the New World Order. We gave a commitment to our people to pursue the shared vision for Dominica at all costs. During the first decade of the 21st century, we had to ask ourselves some fundamental questions, including among them were, can a developing country sustain its development without using the resources which it has in abundance? Are we putting our natural resources to optimum use? Our sunshine, geothermal energy, ocean, rivers, mountains, forests, fertile land? Are our human resources equipped with the awareness, the skills, and or the competencies to compete and succeed in a new global marketplace? Can we diversify our economy and our markets to avoid overdependence on one crop or one customer? Can we produce import substitutes to save foreign exchange and create wealth and employment at home? Does development necessarily come with the price tag of having to destroy our natural environment and our communities? Does a developing society have to tolerate a large, poor underclass to keep workers on their toes? Dominica's responses to these questions are embedded in this 2014 manifesto. For example, in my letter at the front of the document is a clear answer, and I quote, "Let me remind you, however, that the Dominica Labour Party saw these challenges not as disasters, but as opportunities to use our God-given resources to pursue the vision of a prosperous, peaceful, and just Dominica. In order to achieve this, we shall continue to diversify and grow our economy, simultaneously making it resistant to external shocks and more sustainable over time. We believe that this can only be achieved by increasing the investment in our human resources, by continuing to educate and train our people to become more enterprising in the emerging, highly competitive global village. Throughout the process, we will act responsibly in mobilizing the financial resources that are necessary to make things happen." End of quote. We knew from as early as 2000, and we still know, that the Dominican Labour Party is the best equipped party to successfully pursue true independence by merging political sovereignty with economic security, prosperity, and social justice. It was also clear that the United Workers' Party misunderstood and continues to misunderstand the New World Order that was and still is evolving. From the inception, we knew that we had to stabilize and grow the economy. The first task was to reduce the high debt to GDP ratio that had plagued the country since 1995. In 2000, the national debt stood at 130% of GDP. By 2013, the DLP had reduced it to 70% of GDP. Throughout these years, we formulated an enlightened foreign policy that enabled us to select partners in development to raise grants and concessionary financing for the Public Sector Investment Program, the PSIP. In turn, this investment was carefully spent to boost the economy and create employment. By 2004, the economy had stabilized and actually grew by 3%. Unfortunately, the growth rate was retarded thereafter by Hurricane Dean and the global financial and economic storms. Despite this, we have been able to achieve modest growth and even increase the social services to our people. Above all, we have been able to develop a series of policies and programs which have already begun to bear fruit. During the past 14 years, we have been able to reduce poverty from nearly 40% to 28%, and the rate of indigence from 10% to 3%. Presently, we have completed the preconditions for social and economic development and are ready to take off. We have been creating an environment that is conducive to growth and development, and we intend to continue doing so. Look up sections A1 and A2 of the Manifesto to see what we intend on doing in the next term in keeping with our fiscal and economic policies. Basically, we intend to make Dominica the ideal place in the Caribbean for expanding your business or starting a new business venture. Section A3 deals with primary infrastructure as an essential precondition for sustainable economic growth. See how we shall continue to improve transport and communication by land, air, and sea to get our produce out and our visitors in. In section A4, preserving and protecting the environment, we make it clear that the policy of the DLP is to ensure the conservation, protection, management, and use of the nation's forest resources while benefiting from the productive capacity of the forest for goods, products, and services in such a way that they are maintained or enhanced for present and future generations. See how this policy has given us access to over $100 million from the World Bank to help prevent climate change. Section A5, towards the establishment of a green economy, we explained how we have decided to abandon our reliance on fossil fuels to drive the economy and turn to a major source of renewable energy right here in Dominica, geothermal energy. Section A6 illustrates how we have been promoting entrepreneurship and micro-business development, particularly among our young people. Section A4, agriculture and fisheries, shows how we came to the rescue of farmers since 2000 and have been helping them to diversify their produce. Ladies and gentlemen, going forward, agriculture will remain one of the pillars of the economy of Dominica to ensure food security, foreign exchange savings, and vertical integration with tourism and for export. We shall also help fisherfolk to modernize fishing. Section A8 deals with manufacturing and agro-processing. It shows how manufacturing will grow from 4.5% of GDP to 10% of GDP. Section A9 explains how tourism, particularly ecotourism, will be diversified and developed to account for 15% of the country's GDP. Social services or social issues, closely linked to overcoming the economic challenges, are a host of social policies and programs. These are the means of ensuring that economic development is sustained and that the wealth of the nation is more equitably distributed. Section B1 on poverty commits the government to reducing the poverty level to 10% by 2020. That is from 28% to 10% by 2020, and continue relentlessly to wipe out ignorance, poverty, and injustice in Dominica. We shall also bring the indigence rate from 3% to 0 in Dominica. In section B2, we show how the family will be strengthened by providing family education in schools and colleges. Communities will be equipped to provide support systems for families in need. With respect to Section B3 on health, it shows how from 2009, free healthcare was made available to Dominicans below 18 years of age and those 60 years of age and above. We intend on introducing a national health insurance system for all Dominicans in collaboration with PAO by 2020 and upgrading or building new hospitals in Portsmouth, Roseau, and Marigot. Section B4 on education explains how education with related training constitutes one of the most important tools for economic and social development. In this section, see how we have achieved universal access to education at all levels and how we intend to transform secondary and tertiary education to meet the current and future needs of the nation. I drink a lot of blue beer water. So. And I don't know why they don't get me free, because I'm the main promoter of blue beer water. Civics, and I stress on civics, culture, technical and vocational skills, agriculture, and hospitality will feature prominently in the curriculum. So civics will be mandatory in all schools in our country come 2015. Section B6 on housing records how the DLP created a revolution in housing from 2005 with the Housing and Sanitation Program. See how the housing revolution will continue to replace all dilapidated houses and pit toilets by 2020. There shall be no pit latrines in Dominica by 2020 under a new Labour government. We shall build at least 1,500 affordable and new homes. Continue to train more craftsmen and women for the building and construction industry. In Section B7, youth, it was stressed that the National Youth Policy will be fully implemented to empower young people to drive the economic and social development of the nation. The Youth Development Division, NYCD, and other youth organizations will be strengthened to channel unemployed young people into opportunities for work experience, training, and employment in fulfillment of their National Youth Service obligations. Section B8 on gender makes it clear that Dominica cannot move forward leaving a large and vital segment of its population behind. See how a government with 4 dynamic and resourceful female parliamentary representatives will help us involve women more fully at all levels of management into the mainstream of society. Section B9 shows how the indigenous people of Dominica have benefited from the policies and programs of the DLP and how the DLP government will involve them fully in the further development of a beautiful country. And at the first sitting of Parliament, we shall go to Parliament to amend the Act to officially recognize and to change the name from the Carib Territory to the Kalinago Territory. And of course, declare a national holiday, recognizing the contribution of the Kalinago Braves to our development. Section B10, sports, shows how the DLP will continue to use sports as a means of national development. It will help more Dominicans to get involved in all sorts of sports to improve their health, to create opportunities for lucrative careers in all dimensions of sports, and to help diversify the tourism industry with sports tourism. Similarly, Section B11, culture and the arts, explains how the DLP government will use our cultural values, our cultural expressions, and our cultural products to improve our standard of living and quality of life. In section B12 on public service outlines that we give a commitment to public servants to continue to train them, to become increasingly efficient, and to reward them for their productivity. We did not mention the reinstatement of the 5% because that was done 8 years ago. In section B13, civil society, we acknowledge the importance of civil society in developing the nation. Government will always play a leadership role, but it cannot transform Dominica on its own. We shall therefore strengthen the civil society organizations and work even more closely with them going forward. A fundamental principle of the Dominica Labour Party is that no one will be left behind as the country becomes more prosperous. So in section B14, the social safety net, we show how the social safety net will be strengthened. For example, successful projects like Chances, Yes We Care, and the Prime Minister's Public Support Program will be expanded. In section B15, on law and order, justice, national safety and security, we show what has been done and what we shall continue to do within our borders and beyond to maintain respect for the law and the safety and security of our people. In keeping with our policy for inclusion, section B16, entitled Embracing the Diaspora, shows how we will reach out to the Dominicans living abroad to play an even greater role in the sustainable development of our mother country. In the final section, B17, foreign policy, gives due credit to the enlightened foreign policy development by the DLP since 2000. It goes on to explain that these same loyal and generous friends of Dominica have given their commitment to help finance the exciting packages of programs that will come on stream during the next term. So we do have the financing and the commitment for the financing of the programs and projects captured in this 2014 manifesto. So these are not pie in the sky ideas. These are not ideas as you're driving by and somebody shouts something to you, then you say it next morning. These were carefully considered, carefully studied, carefully examined, and the resources we got out to negotiate for it. For example, my community day of service was spent in Venezuela with the president of Venezuela, talking about financing for some of the projects. And I got a firm commitment for the continued financing of the National Employment Program. So that shall continue in Dominica. We also secured $12 million US for the improvement of the main port, Woodbridge Bay Port, from Venezuela. And that should begin sometime in December, January of next year and so on. So ladies and gentlemen, in keeping with the theme of the 36th anniversary of independence celebrations, the Dominica Labour Party calls on all Dominicans, individuals in the public and private sectors, in civil society organizations, in communities and in families, to take greater responsibility for our livelihoods and our social and natural environment. We shall be playing a leadership role in these changes by creating the conditions for all stakeholders to play their part. We shall continue to be more entrepreneurial and innovative. We shall continue to be the main driver of growth in the economy by exceeding the 20% of GDP we have contributed over the past 5 years. We expect the private sector to be moving and to be more entrepreneurial and innovative, to take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves in regional and multilateral trade agreements, such as the OACS Economic Union, the CARICOM Single Market, the EU-ACP Economic Partnership Agreement, and bilateral agreements that result from government's foreign policy initiatives. We shall deepen and strengthen dialogue with and support the private sector through the Business Forum and other representative bodies. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, Dominica has made tremendous progress under the DLP leadership over the past 14 years. Those who remember the conditions in the last years of the 20th century could testify to the transformation which has taken place despite a prolonged recession. We have relentlessly pursued the vision of a Dominica as a prosperous, peaceful, and just society. That vision is now within reach of realization. The measures with which this manifesto deals will kickstart the process of economic emancipation and is necessary for prosperity. The established policies of equal opportunity and social inclusion will ensure that the wealth is more equitably distributed than if left to chance. But we have to ensure the continued prudent and responsible management of the finances of the country. We also have to ensure, ladies and gentlemen, that there's continued strong fiscal policy. And I'm saying to Dominicans, I have said to all of us continuously, small, open, vulnerable economies like ours that are highly susceptible to external shocks, prudent, strong, and responsible fiscal policies is paramount. And we have to understand that the things which we have control over, we must take full charge and control of, because we do not have control of what happens outside of Dominica. So when things happen outside of Dominica, as we're now seeing with the global recession, we can withstand the pressure and we may be in a position to respond to it and do better than most. That is why, notwithstanding the global recession, we continue to forge ahead with many public sector investment programs. That is why you have not seen any negative impact on the social safety nets in this country. As a matter of fact, we have broadened them and strengthened them, notwithstanding the global economic crisis. And this is why, as the Minister of Finance, and I have said to my cabinet colleagues, there must always be one Minister of Finance. Anytime you have a government where there is more than one, you're going to be in trouble. And this is why in this Labour Party government, there is but one Minister of Finance. And I do not intend to delegate that responsibility to any other body, but the Prime Minister must hold this Minister of Finance firmly and guide the country forward. So understand what we're presenting and understand what others are seeking to present. The Dominica Labour Party is grateful to all the stakeholders in development for their support. But none of this progress would have been possible without the support of the people of Dominica and its diaspora, whom the Dominica Labour Party has had the privilege to serve. My dear friends, Dominicans, we are now on the threshold of making history with a great leap forward in Dominica. But we know for sure that these projects will not continue without the leadership of the Dominica Labour Party. So, on election day, vote for the Dominica Labour Party. Vote for yourselves. Vote for Dominica. And vote for the future of your children, those born and those yet to born. And I won't ask you for your financial contributions. But if any one of you would like to make a financial contribution, you can let the campaign manager know so we can take your contacts and so forth. I thank you very much for listening to me. And I thank you profoundly for your presence. You will recognize that in this campaign, we have been doing things differently as a party. It is the first time in the history of politics in Dominica that we've had such an occasion where a party can speak to the population, the private sector, the civil society, the religious community, the trade unions, the school students about its manifesto before it takes it to the political platform, You saw the professional outlook of our launch on Saturday gone, and you continue to see the professionalism in the display. That is a party that on January 1st is ready to continue developing Dominica. We don't have to search and look for documents. The leader of the party knows where every single document is in the public service. So when he goes to work the next day, he's going to continue working. So I'm going to hit the road running. So I'm saying to you that we have an opportunity to make a huge difference in our society. This is not about whether you love me or you love the Labour Party. This is about whether you love Dominica. And if you say you love Dominica, then clearly there is a simple choice to make. And I want to show you, I mean, this is historic. Because, you know, traditionally, the manifestos are launched 2 days before polling day. I presented to the nation on Saturday at our lunch. And here it is. This ugly fellow, and so you can forget about him. But here it is, and so forth. Labour, Katwabai, and Labour, they continue to provide for Dominic. Thank you very much. May God bless you. May God bless our country.